The Rings of Power were crafted by the Elves of Eregion, led by Celebrimbor, son of Curufin, and grandson of Feanor, the greatest smith to ever live. Celebrimbor was tricked into forging 19 rings by the Dark Lord Sauron, who posed as the fair elf Annatar, claiming only to want to share his knowledge and skill with his elven kin. And so Sauron imbued his evil into each of the rings, yet saving the greatest of his power for the one ring, which he would craft himself in the fires of Mount Doom. One ring to rule them all, in which he imbued so much of himself his body became attached to the ring, unable to exist without it. The Rings of Power were said to bring their bearers wealth and long life, and many of them even turned their holders invisible. Yet each of these rings contained great evil, and would eventually bring great misfortune. When Sauron completed his work, he put on the One Ring, in the hopes of corrupting the elves who bore the other 19. Yet when he did so, the elves immediately felt his wicked presence and took the rings off. Sauron was enraged and made war against them, demanding they surrender the rings. 16 were recovered, but the elves managed to keep the greatest 3, crafted by Celebrimbor himself. The first was Narya, the Ring of Fire, worn by High King Galad, later given to Cirdan, and then to Gandalf the Grey. The second ring was Nenya, the Ring of Adamant, worn by Galadriel, the Lady of Light, who kept it in her fortress of Lothlorien. The third ring was Vilya, the Ring of Air, first possessed by Galad, but later given to Elrond of Rivendell. These 3 rings were kept hidden from Sauron, and their locations were closely guarded secrets for years. Sauron took the 16 he was able to recover and gave 7 to the Dwarf Lords, 1 to each of the kings of the 7 clans. However, they proved resistant to his touch, unable to be turned obedient. It is said this may have been because they were creations of Aule and not Ilúvatar, and were therefore given special gifts such as resistance to certain evils. Yet the Dwarf Lords were not totally immune. Though they could not be made subservient, the rings did affect them in other ways. The dwarf leaders became ever more greedy, delving deeper and deeper into their mountains, developing an insatiable lust for gold and treasure. This greed would ultimately attract dragons and lead to the ruin of their houses and clans. 4 of these rings would end up consumed by dragons, while the other 3 were once again recovered by Sauron, with one of them being taken off the very finger of Thrain II, heir of Thror, and father to Thorin Oakenshield, in the battle to retake Moria. After leaving 7 rings with the Dwarf Lords, Sauron made his way to the realms of men, traveling to see the Black Númenóreans, the Easterlings, and others. 9 leaders of men were chosen, and at first, the rings gave them great power and wealth, extending their lives and making them powerful sorcerers. But eventually the rings took their minds, and they became the Ringwraiths, called the Nazgûl, turned permanently invisible and made completely obedient to Sauron's will. Their leader was the Witch King of Angmar, who would serve as Sauron's first lieutenant and would lead his armies in the War of the Ring. After Sauron's defeat in the Second Age, Isildur, son of Eärendil, took the One Ring of Power for himself. As a result, Sauron would survive and return in the Third Age to wage further war. After Isildur, the ring would come into the possession of Smeagle, one of the river folk, who became corrupted by its evil and turned into the creature Gollum. Next, Bilbo Baggins would steal the ring and pass it down to his nephew and heir, Frodo. Finally, it would be Frodo and his friend Samwise Gamgee that would destroy the ring, casting it into the fires of Mount Doom, and ending Sauron's reign of darkness once and for all.